Uh, are you seeing my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So this is a series that we're starting today. I don't know how long it will run, but it might not be as long as the one we did on the difference from the parable of the talents. And we're looking at preparing for greatness from lessons from the ant. So we'll look at the ant, we'll look at some things we can learn from the ant, and we'll just apply the lesson. So it's starting today, my run to the end of the year. So this is the way of closing the year and also preparing for the new year. So that's what we're doing. We're closing the year and we are preparing for the new year. So how do we prepare for greatness is what we want to do. So let's go to the ants. And what we're talking today, so this episode 21 is the no excuse mindset. So Proverbs 6 is where we're starting this evening. Proverbs 6 says, go to the ant, you sluggard, consider her ways and be wise, which having no captain, overseer, or ruler, provides her supplies in the summer and gathers her food in the harvest. So this is like the foundational text that we'll use all through this particular series. The foundational text is Proverbs and chapter 6. So we see certain things here. The number one here is that wisdom is the foundation of success. You can say, go to the ants, consider her ways and be wise. So the foundation of success is wisdom. You all agree with me that we all desire to succeed. The deep within everyone is a quest to become more, to achieve more, to do more with our lives. I think that quest for greatness is innate. When God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion, I think that statement placed in every human being the capacity for more is the reason why we don't like restrictions in our life. We want to expand, we want to increase. We may try to deny it, we may ignore it, we may even suppress it or fight it, but deep within, that desire cannot be drowned or quenched. Every one of us here, we are wired for greatness, to be in control of our lives, to achieve more. Think about it, even as kids, you ask them what you want to be in future, a child will tell you what he or she wants to be. And usually the dream is about conquering the world. I want to be an astronaut, I want to be an engineer, I want to be a preacher, whatever it is, standing on the top of the podium of life and receiving all that life has in store for us. But we know that greatness will not just happen. The lives of many little princes and princesses that have been derailed, it's a testament that dreams alone are not sufficient to make us great. That success doesn't happen by happenstance. It follows a bit of intentionality. And you'll now find out that when you look at the lives of men who accomplished greatness, that wisdom is the missing link. It was wisdom that made Joseph prime minister in Egypt. His ability to interpret dreams and solution to the problems of people made him prime minister. It was wisdom that made David kill Goliath. It's the thread. Wisdom is the thread that connects our desires and dreams to realities. It turns them into tangible achievement and crystallizes our expectations and hopes into results. So everywhere, whether you look at the business balance or spiritual balance, the common thread in the tapestry of greatness, the common denominator, the foundation of every success story is wisdom. And that's why this proverb says, go to the ants, consider her ways, and be wise. Wisdom is the foundation of every success story. No wonder Solomon says, in all you're getting, you should get wisdom. In this series, we'll define what wisdom is from a practical standpoint. But what we're just laying here is that the foundation of every success story is wisdom. We'll talk about wisdom as a unique insight. We'll talk about wisdom as foresight. We'll talk about wisdom as thinking about the future, maximizing the present. We'll go into the definitions in this series as we continue. But the first thing I just want to say here is that wisdom is the foundation of success. You know, so many times we pray for breakthroughs. I think the prayer we should be praying more, that even when your breakthrough comes, that God will give you the wisdom to manage the breakthrough. When Joseph stood before Pharaoh was a breakthrough moment. It took wisdom to manage it. And if you check scripture, the Bible says that God gave Joseph favor and wisdom before Pharaoh. Favor brings you before great men. Wisdom keeps you in the presence of great men. Favor opens the door. Wisdom keeps the door open. So most times you see favor for breakthrough, favor for this. God gave Joseph, I think it's Acts in chapter 7 there, about it was favor and wisdom. We like to talk about favor, unusual favor, uncommon favor, but it was the combination of favor and wisdom that made Joseph become prime minister. So I'm not talking about the favor series here, I'm talking about the wisdom series. Let me go to point number 2. Point number 2 says, consider her ways and be wise. And this for me is one of the biggest mysteries of wisdom, that wisdom is seen in behaviors. There's a difference between intelligence and wisdom. Intelligence can be measured by standardized IQ tests. So you can become a PhD holder and even a professor based on intelligence. But the fact that you have a PhD based on intelligence doesn't mean you are wise. Because there are people that have PhDs in Bible knowledge and even professors of Bible knowledge who do not even believe that God exists. And the scripture says a fool says in his heart that there is no God. So although by standardized tests, that man is intelligent, but in the context of wisdom, the man is not wise. He says, consider her ways. Consider her ways. So wisdom is seen in behaviors. Wisdom is not the accumulation of information. That's intelligence. Wisdom is transformation of character. So that's what you need to understand. And we'll talk about this as we define wisdom in this. So it's not just the accumulation of intelligence or information, it's the transformation of characters. I know that you're a wise person by the behaviors you put forth. And like I tell people, if I can't prove anything I'm saying, do not believe me. Okay, so I wanted to ask, are you still with me? Are you still following me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to
Yes, yes,
thank you.
Yes,
So
sir.
wisdom is seen. So there are a lot of wise people who are not, in inverted comma, who will not pass standard intelligent tests. But are they wise? Yes. So this is a classic. So please mute. Can you mute your mic, please? Can you mute your mic? Thank you. This is a classic example of certain people who are not graduates. So they will not pass your standard GMAT test. But these are people who are multi-billionaires. They've set up multi-billion-dollar companies and industries. So you might not call them, in quote, intelligent from your PhD standard intelligence test. I'm sure if you give them those econometrics and astronomy questions that you ask, they might fail it. But they have been able to build multi-billion-dollar industries. Wisdom is seen in behaviors. That's why it says, consider her ways. Show me a wise man, and I'll tell you that the man is wise, not because he can regurgitate facts and figures, but because of his behavior. So one proof, you understand, is James and chapter 3. James 3 from verse 13 says, who is wise and understanding amongst you? He says, let him show by good conduct. Can you see that? Let him show by good conduct, by his behaviors, that his works were done in the meekness of wisdom. Wow. So there's something about wisdom that makes you meek. There's something about wisdom that makes you humble. In that sense, but if you have bitter envy and self-seeking in your heart, he said it doesn't matter the knowledge that you can regurgitate, the revelations that you can share. He said, do not boast and lie against the truth. The truth is that you are not wise. If you have bitter envy and self-seeking in your heart, he said this particular wisdom that comes with bitter envy and self-seeking is not from God, but it is earthly, it is sensual, it is demonic. Wow, it is demonic. So there's what is called demonic wisdom. And demonic wisdom is saying, you see bitter envy, you see self-seeking. Demonic wisdom is not humble. Demonic wisdom wants to be the spotlight. And it says this wisdom does not descend. So there's a wisdom from above and there's a wisdom that is of the earth. And if you see those people, they have all the titles, but deep within, they're very jealous. There's envy, there's self-seeking, there's pride, there's arrogance. They say where there's envy and self-seeking, where envy, self-seeking exists, is a confusion and every evil thing there, but I like verse 17. Verse 13 and verse, so this is like a sandwich. Verse 17 says, but the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. Can you see that true wisdom is seen in behaviors? That's what it is. But the wisdom that is from above is first pure, is peaceable, is gentle, is willing to yield. True wisdom is seen in behavior. So it's in your behaviors that I know that whether you are wise or not. Consider her ways and be wise. The third thing I want to say here, because this is just an intro to this series, the third thing I want to say from the ant is that wisdom can be taught. So you can actually learn wisdom. That's why I said go to the ant and use sluggard. He said consider her ways and be wise. So wisdom can be taught or wisdom can be learned. You can learn wisdom. And as I pondered over this, I think there are two forms of wisdom, apart from the spiritual and the demonic that we've talked about. The two forms here is what I call observational wisdom and experiential wisdom. What do I mean by observational? Experiential is the one that you experience. So it's the wisdom that comes from your own experience. So you start a business, you fail, you learn from that failure and you develop it. That's experiential. You experience it. You've experienced betrayal and hurt and you've learned to forgive. Now you know, next time you know how to read the red flags. That's experiential wisdom. But there's observational wisdom. Observational wisdom is the wisdom that you learn just looking at the lives of others. And if we can learn from the ants in this context are not spiritual. You can learn from the ants. They are not prayer warriors. You can learn from the ants. It means that you can learn from every event in life. You can learn from your boss in the office. You can learn from your colleague. You can even learn something from an unbeliever. You don't need to learn his lifestyle, but there are certain things that you can learn. That's observational wisdom. Observational wisdom for me is cheaper. Because you don't need to, if somebody loses $1 million before he succeeds, I don't need to lose $1 million before I succeed. I might not have a second chance to succeed after I've lost $1 million. So experiential, observational wisdom is looking at other people. In this case, is the ant. And so it can actually be a professor in school or whatever, and you can just learn from them. So many years ago, and I wrote it in my book, where I was in a particular place where I asked myself question, God, how did I find myself to this place? How did I find myself? You know, sometimes you have certain leaders that you say, God, how did I find myself here? Because everything, in fact, not everything, the leaders' behaviors were, well, just out of sync with what I think that leaders should demonstrate. And one day while I was asking that same question, God, how did I find my way here? You know what God said to me? Maybe I brought you here to learn how not to lead. So there are two ways you can actually learn how to lead and how not to lead. And maybe I brought you here to learn how not to lead. That day was like an epiphany for me. The complaints turned to learning situations. So instead of complaining, when the leader makes a mistake, instead of complaining, the mistakes of the leader now became an instrument for me to learn. And I'll say to myself, Maxwell, when you become your own boss, please ensure that you don't make this mistake. I can give you one classic example. One of the issues was that salaries were not paid on time. And I saw one of those people went through in that particular place of salaries not being paid on time. And I said to myself, Maxwell, whenever you have the opportunity to start your own company or this, ensure that you don't make this same mistake. And God is my witness. You understand? The people that work for me, I ensure that their salaries are paid. No stories. They cannot enter the next month. How? Why? It's not possible, simply because I learned it from an observational part. So you can learn observational from the good, the bad, the ugly. So in this particular case, I learned how not to lead from somebody else's mistake. You can actually learn how to lead from somebody's own strategy and strength, and that's observational wisdom. So in the third point of wisdom is that wisdom can be taught, wisdom can be learned. If wisdom can be taught, it tells me something again about wisdom, that no man can monopolize wisdom. I can actually learn, you understand? No man can monopolize it. We can learn from one another. We can learn from even animals and the ants. So wisdom is not the exclusive preserve of certain people, but it takes humility for you to go to the ant and learn. I want you to imagine that, telling somebody, go to the ant and study the ant. It takes humility for you to say to yourself, I can learn from the ant. And that's the reason why people do not experience or discover wisdom is because of pride. It takes humility for you to recognize that I need to learn something from the ant. I might be bigger, I might be stronger, but there's something I can learn. And that's what wisdom is. It takes humility to learn wisdom. So those are 3 things I want to say about just like a foundation in verse 6, which is Proverbs 6:6. So go to the answer slogan, consider our ways and be wise. Is that number 1, that wisdom is the foundation. That's why Solomon says wisdom is the principal thing. In all you're getting, please get wisdom. Number 2, you understand? What's the number 2 thing that I said here? What's number 2? Okay, wisdom is seen in behaviors. Yeah, that's number 2. So wisdom is the accumulation of knowledge. And number 3 is that wisdom can be taught. So having said that, I'd like to now go back to this particular parable. And today, I just want to drop one idea with you about the ants. And we see that in Proverbs 30:25. We also see that in Proverbs 6. So just one idea that we can drop today and we can run with it. The first thing I want to say here about the ants is Proverbs 30:25 or 24 says there are 4 things which are little on the earth. I like the word little. Little means that they are not strong. Little means that they are small. Little means that they have certain disadvantages in life, but they are exceedingly wise. So it doesn't matter their size, you understand, they are exceedingly wise. He said the ants are a people. Proverbs says this with you like an individual ant, but this as a group are a people not strong. Yet, so in spite of their weaknesses, in spite of their limitations, in spite of the fact that they are little and not strong, say yet they prepare their food in the summer. Next time, maybe we'll look at what preparation is. I think for me, what I want to talk today is one key lesson from the art is what I call the no excuse mindset. That's what I want to talk about today. As we've talked about the 3 pillars of wisdom from Proverbs, I just want to talk about the no excuse mindset. You see, if you consider the ant has a lot of limitations. So Proverbs 6 says it has no captain, it has no overseer, it has no ruler. So there's really, so you can say, I have no father, I have no mother, I have no helper. I just want to be sure that the network is still okay. Can you people still hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Sometimes, and I understand this, and from the lesson here, if you look at the ant, there is really no animal that has everything going for it. In the same vein, there's really no individual that has everything going for it, which having no captain, overseer, or ruler. So there's so many principles we can bring. The principle of self-leadership, the principle of self-motivation. We'll come to it much later as we progress. But the first point here is, I don't understand, I don't know what excuse you are using, you are giving for your failure. But the ant doesn't have a captain, doesn't have an overseer, doesn't have a ruler. Yet, in spite of the limitations of size, of the weakness of strength, yet, in spite of that limitation, the ant is a success story. And we've seen the way people have trampled on the ant, yet the ant is still surviving. And this is a lesson that every one of us needs to learn. There's certain things you lack in your life. And I understand that. Maybe you don't have a captain, you don't have an overseer, you don't have a ruler. You don't have a rich path, for example. You were not bequeathed an inheritance. You don't have something you can, a fallback option, so to speak. Yet, in spite of that, the ant is successful. And this is one lesson that every one of us needs to learn. If we need to succeed, wise people cut off the excuses that others give. Wise people cut off the excuses of their word. There's always something that you can use to, please, can we mute I'm trying to mute somebody. There's always something that we can use to give excuse for our failures. I don't have, please, if you, Mr. Godwin, please, can you mute? I've muted you 3 times, please. Please mute your list. Okay, there are so many Godwins here. Okay, let me not go into that. Everybody has something to Give an excuse. Oh, I'm muted. Can you people hear me now?
Yes, sir. Yes,
I
sir.
think I muted everybody. That's the reason. So please, okay, thank you. Everybody has something that you don't have. For me or you, it might be different, but we all have something that we do not have. But you know what wise people do? They do not use what they do not have for their failure or their excuses or their poverty. Now you can even say, I don't want to go political, you understand? You can even say some nations, it looks as if there's no captain, no overseer, no ruler. But in spite of that, people are succeeding. They are not strong. In spite of that, they are providing their food in the summer. So I would say for time's sake, it's not what we lack. We all lack something that dictates our future success or determines our future success. But our ability or inability to handle the opportunity that life affords. That's the reason why we fail. It's not background, it's not what you don't lack, it's not what you don't have or what you lack that determines. There are people from the same background with us that have succeeded in spite of the same limitations. And so wisdom is about that ability to harness the opportunities that life has given to you rather than complain over what you don't have. So fools focus on what they don't have. Wise people ask themselves, how can I make the best of what life has given to me? And for those of us, because of my time, those of us that those days you need to play cards, you understand, the card game where you divide the card and you give somebody 3 and you take 3 and you put 1 down. Sometimes when you see the card, the options that you have, you can't even play with the options that you have. What do? Do you give up because your starting premise is not right? No. You know what you do? The concept is go to the market. You go to the market, you take an extra card, you go back again, and you use the combination in order for you to win. That's what wise people do. But you know what foolish people do? They blame life for the initial cards that they have. Yes, the combination might not be okay, and I understand that. And I'm not trying to exonerate that, but that's not the reason why you failed. The reason why you failed is simply because you did not maximize the opportunities that life has given to you. So if you see here, I feel that many people blame their failures or their setbacks the little in their lives, but it's not the little that is holding us back. It's the willingness to use the little as an excuse for failure. So once you've decided that that little is an excuse, you shut yourself from the opportunity of succeeding. Imagine if the ant has said, well, I'm little, look at giant human being. What? Imagine if the ant has used her size, you understand, or not having an as an excuse for failure. That would have been the end of the story. Anything you give as an excuse becomes the key that locks you to your past. That's what anything you give as an excuse locks you, holds you, wedges you to your past. That's what an excuse does. And a friend of mine once said that excuses, you understand, doesn't limit God, it actually limits us. So the people who were sent to spy the land came back with an excuse. God did not, their excuse did not reduce God from being God, did not stop anything of God, but it stopped them from entering Canaan. So excuses close the door of your future because it holds you back to your past. So the first lesson here that we need to learn from the ant is that the ants generally for this do not give excuse. They have a no excuse mindset. So I want to bring this to a close, and I want to say here that excuses are the hallmark of mediocrity. I'm yet to see a man who succeeded with an excuse. A friend of mine once said that you can either give an excuse or you can find a reason to succeed. And excuses are easy. It doesn't take hard work to find an excuse. I can always find an excuse by my height, by my color, by my background, based on where I'm from, based on I wasn't the firstborn or the secondborn. So you can always find an excuse based on the school you attended. You can always find an excuse. They are a dime a dozen. Successful people take the same thing that people use as an excuse, and they find a way to succeed. Maybe next week, I don't know, I might just talk a bit about excuses and look at some of the excuses that you've given, or some people have given. For every excuse that somebody has given, some people have used the same limitation. Is it physical infirmity? Kobams are super born blind, you understand? And yet, with that is not a limitation. Kobams are super has accomplished greatness in his own way, even with the physical infirmity. The physical infirmity, Mark was born without hands and legs. And instead of him being a beggar, Mark just it's a motivational speaker, you understand, going around the world, motivating people and encouraging people with arms and legs to live a fulfilled life. Is that not an anomaly? You that you have arms, you have legs. A man that doesn't have legs, that cannot hold his wife. And sometimes when you listen to his story, you'll be moved to tears. He said, I can't hold my kids. I've never carried my kids because there's no arm and legs. But guess what? In spite of that limitation, it's a motivational speaker going around the world telling people that in spite of this challenge, you can actually live a fulfilled destiny. And the question I want to ask you here is, what excuse are you giving? What excuse is holding you back? What excuse is stopping you from becoming all that God has in store for you? It's not your past, it's not the little in your life, it's not what you lack, it's failure. You understand, maximizing the opportunity, or you are using that excuse to make yourself a bit comfortable. And let me say this as I bring this to a close. Maybe I'll continue on excuses next week. Now, why excuses can justify failure? Oh, the reason why I failed is because my father did not send me to school. The reason why I failed is because the economy was difficult. I can understand that. So excuses can justify failure, but they do not change failure. They don't change the fact that you failed. It doesn't change the fact that you failed. And this is the lesson that we need to learn. We can justify it, but we're still failures all the same. So I want to bring this to a close. You understand, by telling you that we'll continue this. Maybe I'll continue excuses part 2 and deal with it well. Because before we start talking about what ants do, if you don't deal with the little parts, deal with the mindset once and for all, that there's really nothing stopping you from success, preparing for greatness, then we will not make progress in this. So it's on that note, it's 9